I was 12 in the spring of 1967. I remember a sense of fear that led to a bonding of all the Jews in Israel. For 3 weeks, we were all kind and loving to one another. My father was a Holocaust survivor who had seen whole Jewish communities decimated by an invading aggressor. I was joyously participating in civil defense chores, digging bomb shelters, taping windows, painting over car headlights. He was preparing himself for the decimation of his people.
هل كان أبناء الشعب العربي هم السبب فيما حدث في حرب فلسطين؟ أنا أعرف أن الشعب العربي من كل بلد عربي.
Egypt moves 100,000 troops, 1,000 tanks, and 900 heavy guns into the Sinai Desert. The Egyptian military signs a pact with Syria to the north and Jordan to the east, tightening a noose around Israel's neck. Holocaust scenarios are being discussed openly in the media. After 19 years of an uneasy ceasefire, Israel's enemies are finally going to take up where they left off in 1949. Headlines predict a bloody end. Israeli Defense Department estimates expect at least 10,000 dead in the impending war. Chief Rabbi Gorn sent men to inspect public parks to decide which would be converted to cemeteries after the war. May 23rd. Egypt closed the Straits of Tiran to Israeli shipping, cutting off Israeli ports in Eilat from the rest of the world. The move is officially an act of war. Finally, on May 28th, Prime Minister Eshkol addresses the nation, attempting to calm the raw nerves. He stumbles, obviously not believing his own words. The address only increases the panic. On that same day, in Brooklyn, New York, 20,000 school children gathered at a parade for the Lag BaOmer holiday.
Alle Brüder und Schwestern, was gefühlen sich in Eretz HaKodesh in Eretz Israel, stehen nicht in einem Lager, wo der Rebe steht beschützt sie und schickt sie seine Brüche und Atzwoche und Yeshua in ein vergrößerter Most. Gedei sie sollen mal rauskommen und sie wollen mal rauskommen. Von dem übstigen Massel mit Hatzwoche liegt das Feisch, als spezielles Fuß heraushelfen sie. A durch dem, was sie nicht lernen mit Apostel mehr Teile. Und durch dem, was sie nicht mit keinem sein, noch ein Mitzwe und noch ein Mitzwe. Und wird mit durchlassen keine Gelegenheit in der. Und der Teiche tun in die Hafte und Lache Komecho. In das Massel, jeder Jeden, wo soll sich noch nicht gefühlen, von die Schwierigkeiten, mit welcher trifft sich, und damit wird mit Kuhn, wie schafft der Wetter bejahtzigen. Als eben in Eretz Israel werden sitzen dort sicher, wenn das sagt, die Schule in Beoret, aber Eberstellet Mamschig sein, also sei Schule in Eretz HaKodesh. Yisi Lachem Lonikim, aber Eberstellet sein unser Gott, und der Gott von allen Jeden, wo sie gefühlt sind. Wir haben die und und jeder von euch und wir alle zusammen. Und bin Jucha die Jeden in Eretz HaKodesh, wollen sein dem obersten Volk, was Eretz HaKodesh Bejode am Wohle Absuche HaKodesh Archova, von allen Schwierigkeiten.
Foreign embassies ordered their citizens out of Israel. Many people turned to the Rebe, inquiring whether they should leave. The Rebe responded.
To the students of Yeshivas Torahs Emes, Jerusalem, greetings and blessings. In response to your telegram, you should continue to study Torah diligently, together with all the students. Certainly the guardian of Israel shall not slumber nor sleep. May we hear good tidings. Menachem Schneerson.
The Rebbe's responses were published widely in the Israeli press. In influencing these people to remain, the Rebbe took personal responsibility for their safety. He also, in effect, guaranteed to parents that their children would return home safely. On June 3rd, the Rebbe called on Jewish men everywhere, particularly soldiers of the IDF, to put on tefillin, if only once, to fulfill the Torah commandment for Jewish males to don phylacteries. He quoted the words of the Midrash.
V'ro kol amor kishem Hashem nikra lecha, amizeta das geit idische Zova, wo sehr Anführer ist ad Hashem Elokei Atzvois, is hat dämmelt wie Jorum mi Mekka, da schreckt man sich vor sie. Wenn nosso mi panecha beschewer drochen man bleibt vor sie.
In a special telegram to the Israeli Defense Forces, the Rebbe added,
Soldiers who cannot don tefillin in the morning should do so later in the day. Surely the guardian of Israel shall not slumber nor sleep. The Lord is at your right hand. God will strengthen you, and you will return home safely.
Israeli newspapers were soon running stories of the Rebbe's promise that the enemies of Israel will fear and abandon their schemes against her in merit of Jews putting on tefillin. Jewish men in Israel and around the world began to line up to support their brethren in Israel through the Rebbe's new tefillin campaign. At 7:45 a.m. on June 5, 1967, 183 planes took off from Israeli airfields to attack air bases across Egypt. Within 8 hours, almost the entire Egyptian Air Force would be destroyed. In the battle on the ground, the IDF destroyed more than 800 Egyptian tanks, and thousands of soldiers were taken prisoner. 80% of Egypt's military equipment was lost in the Sinai Desert in under 48 hours. At 9:45 a.m., Jordanian forces in southeast Jerusalem opened artillery fire along the border, and Jordanian troops entered the UN's Jerusalem complex. Israel mounted a strong response. By the morning of June 6th, the IDF Central Command occupied areas around Jenin, the Dotan Valley, and the eastern slopes of Mount Gilboa. In 25 hours of bloody battle, East Jerusalem and Shechem were taken. The site of the Holy Temple, including its western wall, was liberated. On the afternoon of June 7th, Israeli forces began to descend into the Jordan Valley. 24 hours later, the battle ended with the conquest of the Hebron Hills. The strategic Golan Heights, from where Syria had been shelling directly down onto Israeli farms and towns. For years, Syria had shelled farmers, kindergartens, and shops at random. On the morning of June 9th, in a literal uphill battle, 2 brigades of the IDF Northern Command managed to break through Syrian defenses on the heights. After 7 hours of heavy fighting, they established strongholds in the northern and central sectors. On the morning of June 10th, Syrian defenses collapsed and most of the Syrian forces withdrew eastward.
On this morning, the Israelis were moving ahead. There was a sudden panic among our soldiers. Their pullout was done in total chaos. The retreating soldiers had left their weapons behind them and were running home. Some were running even before the Israelis had come anywhere near their positions.
ורוב כולם עוז כשם השם נקרא לך, המזאת das geht idische Zoll, wo sehr Anführer ist an die Shem Elekea 2, ist unter demut wie Joru mi Mekko, da schreckt man sich vor sich. Wir nossen mit Panecha beschewert Rochen, man bleibt vor sich.
At 6 p.m. on June 10th, 6 days after the fighting began, a ceasefire came into effect. Israel experienced a victory unmatched in its history. It conquered an area 3 times its previous size. The world stood in awe. The entire world recognized that a miracle had taken place.
Across the deserts of Sinai, a biblical prophecy comes to pass as the forces of Israel sweep on in an astonishing triumph of strategy.
And that victory is a swift, smashing, and total one, as crack Air Force, infantry, artillery, and tank corps combine to sweep across the Sinai Peninsula to the Suez Canal, east into Jordan.
In 6 days, the war was over. How did Israel do it?
It's the first time in 19 years that Jews have been allowed to visit and pray at the site of the ancient Temple of Solomon.
And Israel shall be a proverb among all peoples.
The Rebbe expressed profound gratitude to the soldiers who had risked their lives in the war. He also termed the war, which was fought in order to save Jewish lives, a war mandated by Jewish law.